Hi, everyone. I am the Tim Chappell, and this is the Stay Great podcast. This will be a new type of episode today as we listen to some clips from Dr. Martin Luther King's sermon called The Drum Major Instinct. This is an incredibly impactful sermon that you can listen to in under an hour, and I highly recommend that you do so because it has got some great points to think about, and these are some of the ideas that I've been meditating on for over a decade, and ever since I was a drum major in my high school days and my college career. So here is Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
This morning I would like to use as a subject from which to preach the drum major instinct. The drum major instinct. And our text for the morning is taken from a very familiar passage in the 10th chapter as recorded by St. Mark. Beginning with the 35th verse of that chapter, we read these words, "And James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came unto him, saying, Master, we would that thou shouldest do for us whatsoever we shall desire. And he said unto them, What would ye that I should do for you? And they said unto him, Grant unto us that we may sit, one on thy right hand and the other on thy left hand in thy glory. But Jesus said unto them, Ye know not what ye ask. Can ye drink of the cup that I drink of, and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with? And they said unto him, We can. And Jesus said unto them, Ye shall indeed drink of the cup that I drink of, and with the baptism that I am baptized withal shall ye be baptized. But to sit on my right hand and on my left hand is not mine to give, but it shall be given to them for whom it is prepared." And then Jesus goes on toward the end of that passage to say, "But so shall it not be among you, but whosoever will be great among you shall be your servant, and whosoever of you will be the chiefest shall be servant of all."
So that was Dr. King reading from Mark chapter 10, verses 35 through 45. I just think it's cool that thankfully technology for that time was able to capture him speaking these words. It's just always better, I think, to hear from the original source, and to hear Dr. King give the sermon is just powerful. This is the only way I can describe it. I'm going to read through the passage as well, but I will be reading from the New International Version. That's the version that I like best because it's simple and I think it's a bit easier to understand. Here's the NIV version of that excerpt. "Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him. Teacher, they said, we want you to do for us whatever we ask." "What do you want me to do for you?" he asked. They replied, "Let one of us sit at your right hand and the other at your left in your glory." "You don't know what you are asking," Jesus said. "Can you drink the cup I drink, or be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with?" "We can," they answered. Jesus said to them, "You will drink the cup I drink, and be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with. But to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared." When the 10 heard about this, they became indignant with James and John. Jesus called them together and said, You know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Those last few verses, starting in verse 43, let me run that back here real quick. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Now, that's kind of the main theme of this sermon that Dr. King gives, and gives some perspective on this drum major instinct. Now, for those of you who might not know what a drum major is, or who may be thinking about some drums as in a percussion instrument, a drum major actually is a conductor who leads a marching band, the person or the group of people who are waving their arms around and keeping time for the band so that everybody in the ensemble hopefully plays together. I love the sermon also because I was a drum major in high school. I was a drum major at Jacksonville State University with the Marching Southerners, and I was a drum major at Georgia State University with the Georgia State Panther Band, the Sound of Downtown. Shout out to my buddy Anthony for coming up with that. The Sound of Downtown is catchy. I was also a drum major instructor for many years, and I would talk about this in my drum major selection process when we would interview high school students for the position of drum major in those marching bands. So this core concept of how if you want to lead, you have to serve is critical for being a great drum major. In the sermon that Dr. King gives, he mentions our own human and our selfish desires. Let's give that a lesson real quick.
We must understand that we have some of the same James and John qualities. And that is deep down within all of us an instinct. It's a kind of drum major instinct, a desire to be out front, a desire to lead the parade, a desire to be first. And it is something that runs the whole gamut of life. And so before we condemn them, let us see that we all have the drum major instinct. We all want to be important, to surpass others, to achieve distinction, to lead the parade. Alfred Adler, the great psychoanalyst, contends that this is the dominant impulse. Sigmund Freud used to contend that sex was the dominant impulse, and Adler came with a new argument saying that this quest for recognition, this desire for attention, this desire for distinction is the basic impulse, the basic drive of human life, this drum major instinct.
So we all have this desire, this instinct to be out in front, to lead the parade, to be first, Dr. King says. We have to recognize that instinct that is in all of us. Recognition of this is the key thing here in this clip, and recognition is the first step. So before we condemn others for wanting to surpass us or to lead and to do great things, we have to recognize that we all in humanity have this instinct within us. And Dr. King mentions Alfred Adler, who suggests that this is the most dominant impulse of humans, and I think I agree with the man, you know. I think we all have this desire to be recognized, and we all have a desire to seek attention, I think, from others. And Dr. King also gives us a bit of a warning in how that instinct needs to be harnessed, and you got to keep it in check, So here we're going back to the recording here.
There comes a time that the drum major instinct can become destructive. And that's where I want to move now. I want to move to the point of saying that if this instinct is not harnessed, it becomes a very dangerous, pernicious instinct. For instance, if it isn't harnessed, it causes one's personality to become distorted. I guess that's the most damaging aspect of it, what it does to the personality. If it isn't harnessed, you will end up day in and day out trying to deal with your ego problem by boasting. Have you ever heard people that, and I'm sure you've met them, that really become sickening because they just sit up all the time talking about themselves. And they just boast and boast and boast. And that's a person who has not harnessed the drum major instinct. And then it does other things to the personality. It causes you to lie about who you know sometimes. There are some people who are influence peddlers. And in that attempt to deal with the drum major instinct, they have to try to identify with the so-called big-name people. And if you're not careful, they will make you think they know somebody that they don't really know. They know them well. They sip tea with them, and they this and that. That happens to people. And the other thing is that it causes one to engage ultimately in activities that are merely used to get attention. Criminologists tell us that some people are driven to crime because of this drum major instinct. They don't feel that they're getting enough attention through the normal channels of social behavior. And so they turn to antisocial behavior in order to get attention, in order to feel important. And so they get that gun, and before they know it, they rob the bank in a quest for recognition, in a quest for importance. And then the final great tragedy of the distorted personality is the fact that when one fails to harness this instinct, he ends up trying to push others down in order to push himself up.
So this instinct can distort your personality. It causes you to lie because you got to boast or something. It causes one to ultimately get attention, but typically in a bad way. Most people go about getting that attention in a bad way. That is, the how they are getting attention is not good. And that last little bit about pushing others down to push themselves up, that's just craziness that people think that that's how they're going to get ahead in life, because you can't see me right now, but imagine this visualization of that you're standing up and you are taking your hand and forcing somebody else down. Well, if you stop for just a second and look at how you look in that moment, you yourself are bringing yourself further down as well, in addition to that person. So neither of you end up rising up, right? So there's no point in pushing others down. Instead, we should be reaching new heights ourselves and pulling others up with us. That is how we should be conducting ourselves. Now, let's get a little bit into the conclusion here that Dr. King talks about.
But let me rush on to my conclusion, because I want you to see what Jesus was really saying. What was the answer that Jesus gave these men? It's very interesting. One would have thought that Jesus would have condemned them. One would have thought that Jesus would have said, "You're out of your place. You're selfish. Why would you raise such a question?" But that isn't what Jesus did. He did something altogether different. He said in substance, "Oh, I see. You want to be first? You want to be great? You want to be important? You want to be significant? Well, you ought to be. If you're going to be my disciple, you must be." But he reordered priorities. And he said, "Yes, don't give up this instinct. It's a good instinct if you use it right. Yes. It's a good instinct if you don't distort it and pervert it. Don't give it up. Keep feeling the need for being important. Keep feeling the need for being first. But I want you to be first in love. I want you to be first in moral excellence. I want you to be first in generosity. That is what I want you to do." And he transformed the situation by giving a new definition of greatness. And you know how he said it? He said, "Now, brethren, I can't give you greatness. And really, I can't make you first." This is what Jesus said to James and John. "You must earn it. True greatness comes not by favoritism, but by fitness. And the right hand and the left are not mine to give. They belong to those who are prepared." And so Jesus gave us a new norm of greatness. If you want to be important, wonderful. If you want to be recognized, wonderful. If you want to be great, wonderful. But recognize that he who is greatest among you shall be your servant. That's a new definition of greatness. And this morning, the thing that I like about it, by giving that definition of greatness, it means that everybody can be great. Because everybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and your verb agree to serve. You don't have to know about Plato and Aristotle to serve. You don't have to know Einstein's theory of relativity to serve. You don't have to know the second theory of thermodynamics in physics to serve. You only need a heart full of grace.
Ooh, good stuff. If you want to be first, if you want to be great, if you want to be important, you want to be significant, don't give up this instinct. It's a good instinct if you use it right. Keep feeling the need to be important. Keep feeling the need for being first. But I want you to be first in love. I want you to be first in moral excellence. I want you to be first in generosity. Dr. King says, man, that is something to think about. To control this instinct is important, and for us to still desire to be first, but in love, in moral excellence, and in generosity. That's the new definition of greatness that Dr. King is talking about. He also says that in this example, Jesus is talking about how, I cannot give you greatness and I cannot make you first. You must earn it. And true greatness comes not by favoritism, but by fitness, Dr. King says. And so when he says that, this is our call to action in earning greatness through fitness. So I ask you, what are you doing in your daily life to be great in love, to be great in moral excellence, and to be great in generosity? And I'm asking myself that as well. I need to remind myself of those things as well. And I love how he kind of closes out that little segment with everybody can serve. He says it so well put in his Southern accent. I just love it. It's a perfect cadence and the perfect tone, I think. That connects with me, especially since he also mentioned that you don't have to have a college degree to serve, and therefore you don't need a college degree to be great, I think. And it's good news for me and many others that I know actually who don't actually have a college degree. Dr. King says all you need is a heart to serve. So the question to you and to me is, will you serve? And the next clip is the last clip that I'm going to share with you. Again, listen to this whole sermon. Dr. King is such an incredible orator, and I believe that he was the most impactful leader who lived in the 20th century. So you can take some time to listen to this whole thing. You can find it on YouTube, and we'll put a link in the show notes here. But the last clip is something that reminds me of the phrase that's commonly brought up in Stoicism, and that is memento mori, which is Latin for remember that you have to die. This is where Dr. King talks about the thought of his own death and what's said about him at his funeral, and it's something for us to contemplate for our own lives as well.
We all think about it, and every now and then I think about my own death, and I think about my own funeral, and I don't think of it in a morbid sense. And every now and then I ask myself, what is it that I would want said? And I leave the word to you this morning. If any of you are around when I have to meet my day, I don't want a long funeral. And if you get somebody to deliver the eulogy, tell them not to talk too long. And every now and then I wonder what I want them to say. Tell them not to mention that I have a Nobel Peace Prize. That isn't important. Tell them not to mention that I have 300 or 400 other awards. That's not important. Tell them not to mention where I went to school. I'd like somebody to mention that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to give his life serving others. I'd like for somebody to say that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to love somebody. I want you to say that day that I tried to be right on the war question. I want you to be able to say that day that I did try to feed the hungry. I want you to be able to say that day that I did try in my life to clothe those who were naked. I want you to say on that day that I did try in my life to visit those who were in prison. I want you to say that I tried to love and serve humanity.
So this man, with so many accolades, so many awards, in plenty of fraternities, incredibly successful, impactful, significant, influential, and yet all Dr. King wants us to remember him for is that he served others. And I think that is what makes him the greatest leader, in my opinion. Dr. King, you've passed on, and now the only thing I can think to say is thank you. Thank you for serving as the greatest drum major for humanity. A drum major for justice, peace, and for righteousness. Your words have guided me for over a decade and impacted my life to a huge degree. And I have worked to instill that drum major instinct and help others harness that instinct and teach of the principles that you're talking about here to other leaders. And so thank you. There isn't going to be an unpaid ad for this episode, And if you want to connect with me, you know how to reach out. These words of Dr. King are just too important to not have them be the last thing on your mind as we close out here. So I don't want to say too much and take away from what he has said to us today. Again, thank you, Dr. King. You were called to serve just as we are all called to serve in love and in moral excellence and in generosity to others. So thank you for being the greatest example of that. And everybody listening, stay great and take care of each other.
Yes, if you want to say that I was a drum major, say that I was a drum major for justice. Say that I was a drum major for peace. I was a drum major for righteousness. And all of the other shallow things will not matter. I won't have any money to leave behind. I won't have the fine and luxurious things of life to leave behind. But I just want to leave a committed life behind. And that's all I want to say. If I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer somebody with a word of song, if I can show somebody he's traveling wrong, then my living will not be in vain. If I can do my duty as a Christian ought, if I can bring salvation to a world once wrought, if I can spread the message as the Master taught, then my living will not be in vain. Yes, Jesus, I want to be on your right or your left side. Not for any selfish reason. I want to be on your right or your left side, not in terms of some political kingdom or ambition, but I just want to be there in love and in justice and in truth and in commitment to others so that we can make of this old world a new world.